whether or not we're losing ourselves, particularly as Africans. Is it possible for us in this Western world to live in unison? Or are we all just going to go to Virgin Active, do a bit of yoga, and all of a sudden, presto, we're all connected? I don't know, Jock, do you practice yoga?
Nope.
I also haven't, but those people seem quite at zen. I was at gym this morning and everybody was just like doing these things.
Yeah, it's just a money-making scheme, man.
Yeah.
You wake up and you stretch and you become nice alone. So why go to Virgin Active and pay
For
money?
what?
For what?
When I can wake up in my bed and just...
Is that not yoga?
Hey.
Do you not feel relieved after
It
doing
worked
that?
well for my coco.
For so many years.
She lived until like 105.
Wait, she's still doing it.
She's still watching there. She's 100%.
Come on.
Okay, so myself and Joe can only really take you so far with the knowledge that we have. And that's the reason why today we have a lovely guest by the name of Coco Dinewo. How are you?
I like it. I like how you took time and were attentive and precise in pronunciation
Nice.
of my surname.
I had to.
Your Wi-Fi is
especially now.
deeply
Connected.
connected.
Yeah.
No buffer. No buffer here.
No buffer system.
You're operating on a high frequency, right?
And,
Yes.
and I realize it's the little things that matter, right? It's the things that we pretty much overlook. It's like when you go to work and somebody says, maybe like they meet a matlakala. Like, oh, it's matlakala. Okay, we'll call you Mike.
Matakala, chief.
Give matlakala, chief.
Like,
And you'll get it right.
this is me and my Badimus in
Yes.
this name.
Yes.
That's
You are
true.
not just talking about me here.
Yes.
So show some respect.
100%, 100%.
I like you, Job. I like you. I like the way you think.
Thank you.
It is me and my badimus.
Yes.
You know,
It-
and my
it's a
doses
lineage.
that you need to respect.
It's a lineage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question,
Yeah.
Dinewo? And this is me. This is your very typical millennial TV watching,
Western influence.
Western
Yes.
influenced,
Whitewashed.
whitewashed. Went to high schools where we only learned about our history for like one term.
Yeah.
And
in
that was
history.
Shaka Zulu.
And that was Shaka Zulu. It's always Shaka Zulu.
And the misinterpretation of the story.
Yes.
Shaka Zulu.
100%. Now for me, and I was at work yesterday, and one of the executives came to me.
And isn't this work? What is this for you?
It's another one.
It's another work.
Oh, you've got
Yeah,
lots of
multiple
work.
streams. Yeah,
Ah.
no, it's
The
still.
millennial age, yeah?
Yeah.
Can't have one stream.
We're going for it all.
Yeah.
We're coming for it all. We're
It's
intentful
the
about
age
it.
of entrepreneurial spirits.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you get us. The
Yeah.
connection between us is strong. And I was at work yesterday, and Thomas Malada, the guy, he comes to me, he's like, so do you know your Tagazel? And I looked at him and I said, yeah. And he's like, what is it? And I said, the elephant that jumped the mountain. The crocodile.
Got lost. That connection got lost.
The connection got lost. And for me, I believe in authenticity. Right?
Yes.
And that's why we have these shows.
Yeah.
Because it's not a matter of us versus them or the knowledgeable versus the not knowledgeable. We're trying to make this as relatable as possible. And the reason why I bring on acts is because first things first, I don't even know my Tagazel.
Yeah, but
Yes.
maybe let me speak to you about the importance of knowing his Tagazel.
Please, and that's exactly where I
Yes.
was gonna go. It's the connection's
Yeah.
already too.
So you see, the thing is in African spirituality, and I tend to say spirituality than culture, because when we say culture, we're also speaking about African culture now, because culture is a way of life, and spirituality is it's an evolvement of the way of life, and in terms of what we are needing right now in the millennia to remain connected to our Africanness. And the role of his Tagazela now, but to a lineage that we walk with. Because the minute uzi Tagazela, or ngeswati kuthiwa utinanatela, and then kaSotho bar uyireta, you are saying, I am who I am now because I walk with an army of those who have come before me. So Istagazelo is actually the history of Istagazelo. It's the names of the forefathers that have lived before you. So we've stopped it when colonization took shape and apartheid took shape, because every time a son is born, then they would add to Istagazelo. You know.
Amazing.
So for example, Lentuzan. Angisho it's ushabalala, right? Uzala umshengu, umshengu udunga, lagamavuso. So it happened to be that way. So we would actually know that where's your heritage, and it also speaks of who gave birth to you, but also there's some sort of circumstances. Umzilikazi wakabulawayo. Umzilikazi wakabulawayo explains that actually Umzilikazi went and yabona wavuselela ubukhosi bakhe kwaBulawayo. So he became king kwaBulawayo, umzilikazi wakaBulawayo.
Yeah. So simply put, to translate what Gogo just said, for those Western people who understand science and technology, Istakazelo, so Istakazelo is a lineage of ancestral
I was about to
people,
say
right?
it's a lineage.
Yes, but then in terms of science, it's like one cell germinating and spreading to become multiple cells.
Yes.
So it's a spread of information because cells communicate, they share information.
And they are
with cell.
interconnected.
Yes.
So it's not, they're interconnected because in terms of cells, they are living organisms.
Yes.
So it's the living organisms that are connected to you in the spiritual world, but the spiritual world is part of the physical because as human beings, you are body, mind, and spirit. So in the physical, you have to remain connected in African spirituality to your ancestry because who are the ancestors? Then let me, fast forward the thinking here. Ancestors are those who have lived before you that are no longer existing in this body, but they exist in the spirit and they're connected to Creator. Whatever that Creator for you is, whether it's God, Allah, Zimo, Mudimo, Umvelingangi.
Your source of information, basically.
This was a lot of information I was going now, and sparked a lot of questions in my mind. So with me, and I once said this the one day, I said, what, I'm so embarrassed. So, I mean, we're going to the fact of how we've been educated, how we've been schooled. And I remember having conversations with a couple of mates, and I said to myself, it's actually quite embarrassing that I've learned more about my history as a South African from National Geographic than I ever have from school. And even that is somebody else telling our story, so you already know this distortion already.
Yes.
And one of the very interesting factors. So my sister, for example, is married to a Ghanaian, right? And I travel a lot, so I go to Ghana, and whenever I go to a country, I try to learn about the spirituality.
I almost got married to a Ghanaian.
Is it? Okay, we'll get there.
But we'll get there.
Hey, the closest one, like, hey, what you doing now? Oh my God, anyway. Anyway, long story short, so Ghana is, I think, top 5 most religious countries in the world, but it's almost something like ridiculous, like 99% Christian, right?
Yeah.
And the phrase voodoo, for example, right, actually came specifically from Ghana. Because as much as Tina, we have our own Amazulu, we have our own culture, Itagazelo, or whatever. For them, their spirituality wasn't Christianity, it was voodoo. Yeah? And all voodoo meant was a connection with your ancestors. It was never evil.
Yes.
No, but it's the same thing as Upinyanga, how colonization misinterpreted it.
Upinyanga to be evil.
Yes. So it wasn't, I don't think it was even a misinterpretation. It was a deliberate interpretation of moving
Propaganda.
Africans away from their identity. Because, Marcus Garvey speaks about a people who do not know its history and its roots, have no future. So if you are not connected to who you are also easily enslavable because you can be made to believe you are anything.
So can I just ask a question then? Because for me, the dilemma in my mind now is that there's 2 parallels now.
Yeah.
There is our spirituality and culture, etc., all culminated. And then you have the Western civilization and its culture and its Christianity, right? Because Christianity didn't come from Africa, it was brought here, and we had our own. And as much as these things are quite similar, right? My question is then, because this is the one question I can never answer in my head, can these 2 things coexist? Or is it always inevitable that one will cannibalize the other?
I think because we come from centuries, not even decades, of religious oppression. It's going to be very difficult. As a personal choice, they can coexist because it's one and the same thing, the same coin, just different sides.
Yes.
And let me expand onto that. So if you're a Christian right now and you're struggling to coincide with the whole thing of ancestors, amadlozi, you actually are a believer of ancestors, just not your own, because yes, because everybody whom you are calling upon, including Jesus himself, are no more in the physical sense. The whole aspect of resurrection, it's an African concept, because in African spirituality, the highest form which one aspires to be is an ancestor. So we lived a high moral life with an aspiration that when we know more, we can be called upon to facilitate life for those who are living. So that's, I wanted to coincide that for Christians, because then they'll be like, no, I can't believe in that, because if I believe in ancestors, it means I don't believe in God. I don't hear a lot of Christians saying in the name of God. It's always Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. So you're calling upon the dead that is not your own, and you are demonizing your own. Therefore, it means you are a product of demonization. So that's why you cannot thrive, because how you perceive yourself as a person is less of human and less godly. That's why we are still 85% Christians in the continent and are still the poorest.
To just add on this. So that was a mouthful, right?
Yo, fam, listen, I'm still internalizing it now.
Yeah, it's a heavy mouthful. So to go back to your question, right? The Western civilization and African spirituality. So what had happened was, so to correct you first, Christianity does come from African spirituality.
Yes.
Back in the Kemet days.
Yes.
Then it was adopted and brought into a Western way in like, well, I like to use the word propaganda in like a brainwash manner.
Yes.
But the core essence of Christianity is to connect any human being to the highest most level of the
Divinity,
creator.
yeah.
Yes, divinity. You get what I'm saying? Then it was brought that way, right? So now we find ourselves in the world today where we have an increase in churches.
Yes.
We have an increase in your yoga practices. You have an increase in health.
Yes.
All increase in therapy. All these wonderful and nice things that are meant to help people deal and live in uniformity, in center, like in connection with themselves, right? To figure themselves out. But yet at the same time, we have an increase in suicides, in depression, and all these unforeseen things.
And economic challenges and hatred and divisions and isms.
You get what I'm saying? So now this brings a question. If all of these things that are meant to be good, there's an increase of them, yet there's still an increase.
The result is
there's still an increase in the death tolls and the bad things that are happening in the world. Are we really then looking at the right things to get our center, to get our sanity, our anchor?
You know, when we studied engineering, there was a term in when you do IT development, and it's called GIGO, garbage in, garbage out.
Yes.
So if you must look at the results and what's coming out, if it's as garbage, then you know what you put in the system was garbage in the first place.
Yeah.
And your analogy of the fact that really Christianity started in Africa, for me the best analogy is this form. It's almost as though the raw state of Christianity, right, is the African spirituality that we already had, almost like gold, right? Because you take gold out of Africa, what do? You move it into,
and you process it in the West.
and then they send it back to us.
Yes.
So the cycle is always the same.
Perfect. So you can coexist in the current civilization. So for example, we have people like Dineo, we have people like your Dineo Ranakas, we have people like your Masichabas, right?
Yes.
Your Scoop Makatinis,
Yes.
your Black Coffees.
Yes.
So those are people, when you look at their journeys and you listen to their interviews, those are people who are surviving in the system that was brought by civilization, but are using different rules. They're using rules of spirituality, rules of original, like their original being, their internal existence. You get what I'm saying? And that's helping them declutter the noise that's around the world, which is fame, which is material, which is power, which is profit. And it's pushing them to only push craft, which is being absorbed by so many people because it's genuine and it's pure.
I like that. I like what you're talking about, this pushing spirituality, because our essence is spirit. And as Africans, we actually understood that was supposed to be nurtured and not create rules and dogma and create control and domination, because there were a lot of things and how we're perceived. They came back with the term savage and barbaric so that we can see ourselves and how we operated less of human, but we were actually more human and humane in our ways of doing. I say in African systems there was never jails, because when one fails, we all have failed, because that's how we saw our interconnection and our interdependence as a nation, that one of us has to thrive. it takes a village to raise a child, meaning that the child's well-being and rearing is a responsibility of the collective. So if a child misbehaves, it's not it's how have we failed as a whole community to bring up about a moral child. That's why in election, if we are better, this woman next door will, but right now we've lost those things because it's like, it's not my child, I cannot interfere. So we've lost those instances because spirituality is about interconnectedness and interdependent, that in order for me to thrive, and my thriving flowers you, when I thrive, you thrive.
Yes.
So the things of jealousy and nastiness, because also what was instilled with this whole religion is it's the hierarchical system of the other one is better than.
Yes.
It was always about competition instead of complementary. So in African spirituality, I understood that I can only thrive as a sangoma if I work with a good inyanga, and inyanga it's a herbalist. So I needed the medicine man somebody who I didn't see them as my competitor, but I saw them as my complementer, as one, because a sangoma is one who intercedes between the living and the dead. So I understood that in order for me to facilitate healing for those who are seeking my services, I needed a good herbalist. I wouldn't see a herbalist as somebody who's going to take me out of the market. So you should understand the impact and implication of colonization and religion. It has destroyed us in every aspect of ourselves as the black nation, because right now you're doing something, you're a competition. It's not all about how is this person mastering their craft that it can inspire me to master my craft, that they can actually light my path.
For example, I was watching Lucy, right? Remember the famous movie Lucy? But the girl who gets drugs, then
her brain reaches 100%, and then
So if you watch that movie, now go back and watch that movie with a spiritual eye. You'll learn a lot. So there's a point there where they mention Uguti, like living organisms, right? If the environment does not inhibit for it to grow, it self-destructs. It thinks of immortality. So it becomes it's all about self. You get what I'm saying? So anything that it does is to protect and harness itself, which is what we currently see in today's world. It's about profits, it's about power, it's about just me. You don't care whether the next person eats, sleeps, or lives properly. You just care about yourself, right? Versus back in the day, it says again, when the environment is inhibiting of growth, then the living organism, what it wants to do is reproduce, which goes back to the Bible. The only commandment said, get together and reproduce. You get what I'm saying? That is who we are as an essence of human beings. We're not here to marginalize or judge or segregate. We're here to live as a connected nation, as a connected people, in servitude of each other.
I love that, in servitude of each other.
And I want to ask, because now, as much as I'm getting schooled, right, I will be honest, I'm becoming more and more worried now. And I'll tell you why. And we know about this. We don't know about the essence of Ubuntu, right? And I remember, I think about three or four shows back, and Job had mentioned, do we still have Ubuntu? Do we really have it, right? Or is it just a facade that we have in society now? And the question I want to ask now is a very direct one, because if Gogo, you're telling me, for example, taking something as simple as Tagazel and knowing where you're from and building these interrelated links about your lineage, right? And then I come into 2019 and we have stats, for example, such as I think it's kids at the age of, from grade 7 to age of 14 and below, right? Currently, right now, those kids, 62% of them, right, have no relationship with their father figures, right? So already there's a broken chain internally within the family dynamic. Now I'm asking myself, now you have a Lesotho who is in grade 6 or whatever, has never known his father ever, does not know what his history is, and therefore it's very difficult for that person to connect spiritually to their lineage or their bloodline. Because there's one thing that we all agree on, is that colonization has broken us spiritually.
No, in all forms.
In all forms. And now I'm looking at it now in 2019, I'm actually asking myself the question to say, is there even any hope?
No, there is. I think, Lesotho, one thing we need to, I think for me the beginning is to acknowledge. Once you acknowledge something, you can actually shift it and transcend and change it. Because as Africans, we are divided in the way in which we perceive our history. We still could say that, yeah, it was there, but it's not for us. But we need to understand the depths in which it has actually destroyed and destructed the essence of African identity, right? And by doing that and then saying, what are the things we need to put in place to restore ourselves back to ourselves? I always say I struggle, and it's not a judgment, it's an observation. I struggle with Africans who say, I'm proudly African, but you want to denounce your African ancestry. You want to denounce the essence of who you are, which is your spiritual identity. You know, I will not call upon the people who have passed on, but I'm very proudly African. You know, I'm very proudly African, but I would still call somebody with an African skin tone color. I would, you know, I'm proud. So the minute you become negative towards that very same identity, then we lose our progression, then we lose our hope, because we cannot say right now we are coming into, you said earlier on when you introduced us that is Joburg more spiritual, or we become, I think we are becoming a woke generation.
Yes,
we are awakening to some truths, and as we awaken to the truths, it means that we're saying we want power back into our hands. So what we're not going to sit, of course, and just chit chat about what colonization did and what white supremacy did. We should never forget, so we don't find ourselves in the same predicament. And we need to hold people accountable to that. But how do we hold ourselves accountable now as Africans and say, how do we start beginning to reclaim ourselves for our own progression as a nation,
as a society?
You know, Gogo, usually at this point I'll take a break and we'd go into different segments, etc., right? And it's crazy because my head is buzzing.
Process those thoughts. Let's take that break.
Job said it. It's not gonna go into a break.
Yeah, let's, because now it's going to be difficult.